Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This time we're beginning the internal evaluations of the firearms that we just completed the external evaluation series on. So this is the internal evaluation on the Springfield professional model. What we're going to start with are the biggies, right? The frame, slide, and barrel, and what I see as far as how well those things are fit. So let's just start by taking the frame and the slide. Let's put them together. Okay. They're fit very well. Okay, very tight. Okay, very tight fit. This is a good thing. While it's also very smooth. Listen to what's going on here. Okay. They obviously lap the frame and the slide together, and this gun, I don't really know the exact round count, but from what I understand, it's somewhere around 2,500 rounds. Okay, so it's wearing in nicely. Everything's smoothing in and burnishing very nicely as well. On the frame, let's talk about the frame for a moment. There are no rough edges. I mean, they did break all of the sharp edges that you would traditionally find on a frame. They do have a little bit of oil on it, okay, not a ton. And as you can tell, the rail is very smooth. It's wearing in nicely, okay. This side's wearing in a little more than this, than the right side is wearing in a little bit more than the left side. Left is wearing a little front and rear, where the right is wearing a little more uniformly. But I don't see any signs of galling on the rails or abnormal wear at all. They do polish the feed ramp. Hopefully you can see that pretty well, and the checkering is nicely done as well. Okay, not a whole lot to talk about, right? There's just it's done right. It's done well. Everything that should be addressed is addressed in the manner in which the pistol was built to accommodate the work that it was built to accommodate. Okay, let's talk about the slide next. Same thing, right? Everything's pretty uniform. All sharp edges of the slide are broken. There's nothing there that's gonna cut you up. Okay, it's not an aggressive bevel, but it is a broken edge. Okay, so they take a little bit of time. On some of the other manufacturers, you're going to see a much more aggressive beveling on the bottom of the slide, but this one's done in a manner, again, that satisfies the niche that it was supposed to fill. One thing you will notice, which on a pistol of this price point you would expect, if you can, I don't know how good of a look you can get. I do apologize if you're not able to get a clear look at that. We're looking at the bottom of the breech face here. It is radiused, and then it had subsequently been stoned. The breech face is also very smooth. So it tells me they polished that as well. The serial number is engraved on the raceway for this connector here, but it's not raised, so they probably embossed it and then stoned it down so that there was no additional drag on the disconnector as it moves around. Okay, all in all, again, not a whole lot to speak about in respect to the fit and finish. It's well done. It's very well done. They pay attention to the things that are supposed to be paid attention to. The rails have no noticeable tool marks. They're wearing in evenly. There's no signs of galling or any adverse wear. Okay, let's move on to the barrel and the bushing. Okay, these things are pretty important. So I'm going to stick the bushing in the slide, and you can't move that around right now. It's going to be a bitch to get it out because it is tight. Okay, but comes out. So they obviously turn this down and then lap it into place, which is a good thing. The bushing fits the barrel when it would be locked up, which would be right about there, very tightly, right? If I don't move it back and forth, I cannot move it left, right, or up or down. So it's very solid. Okay, it does what it's supposed to do, but it's not binding. It's just tight where it needs to be tight, which is going to give you some of that overall accuracy that you see. Now, not that I'm concerned, because I don't see any shearing or rounding of the upper lugs, and the bottom lugs are wearing relatively evenly. The wear patterns on the bottom lugs, however, they're not super precise. If I had to grant a percentage, I would say we're getting about 49 and 51% of contact left and right. The larger percentage of contact going to the right side lug, okay, as I'm looking down the barrel, the right side lug here, okay. So I have wear marks that are a little more pronounced on the right side lug, and if I look at, and you're not going to be able to see this because they did polish out where the barrel, the lower lugs of the barrel or barrel feet are running on the slide stop pin, but you can tell that, okay, if it's in the gun, it would be the right side lug. It's the wear pattern's slightly more aggressive on that side than the other, and it's very slight. It's very hard to pick up unless you look at it in the right light. So that tells me, and is further evidenced by something I'm going to point out here in a second, that the barrel kind of wants to rock a little bit, and we're talking a minute amount. I'm speaking when I'm making movements, I'm exaggerating. Kind of when it locks up and sits into its home, right, and locks up with the slide stop pin, it kind of wants to cant this way because of that connection, and that's further evidenced by the increased wear pattern through the finish on this right side of the barrel versus not being there on the left. And then you've got a slight gall on the edge of the rear lug where it would be impacting the breech face slightly. Now, I'm not experiencing any adverse effect from this. This probably sorted itself out, and you know, this stuff has been the way it is since the break-in period. Okay, there's no real glaring issues with fitment other than just slightly being imperfect. Okay, and perfection, especially at the lower lugs, is not easy to achieve. You can spend a lot of money and send your gun off to a guy to fit it and make it perfect, but the reality is this barrel is remarkably accurate. This pistol is very accurate. Not a huge deal. It is just one of those things, and I always want to give a good review that points out everything I see. Okay, so now that we're past the frame slide and barrel here, these things are all fit very well, with the exception of that slight inconsistency left and right on the barrel. It's not aggressive. You don't feel it. You don't, you know, see it rocking or doing anything crazy, but it's there when you really examine it. Okay, so now let's dive into some of the smaller parts here. We'll start with the larger of the small parts. The mag well was obviously blended to, you know, the pistol frame. Okay, and it fits relatively tightly. However, what I notice, and it's the same on my other professional model as well as was the same on my TGO. These are Springfield, or excuse me, Smith & Alexander magwells. So the channel, the raceway, right, instead of stoning it to get it to fit to size, what they would do to make it fit tightly to the gun is, if you can get a good look at that, they stake it. Okay, that's something to point that out with. They stake it, boom, 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 and then do it again there, and then they work on those staked components to get it to fit the gun. Okay, it does snip into place, and it does have a secure fit. Okay, so there's no issue there. It's it is a less time-consuming way to ensure that this is tight into the gun. All right, fuck mosquitoes, they drive me nuts, man. So I would have preferred to see the other example being where they buy a product with an oversized rail and then they actually dress that rail to fit the raceway. But 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I'm not going to freak out either way. They don't really dress the leaf spring, okay? On a lot of your semi-customs, you'll see it at a minimum. This middle leaf spring will be radiused and then polished there so that it runs smoothly against the disconnector when the disconnector is going up and down. Okay. Talk about the disconnector here a little bit. You know, they do bevel in the ears of the disconnector slightly left and right so that you don't get disconnector click. And they did do some work to the head of the disconnector, whether they stoned it, sanded it, whatever they did there. It's smooth. It does its job. Obviously, there's still finish left on the bottom of the disconnector, but as you feel it, it's very smooth. So they probably stoned that as well. That would be an appropriate treatment for that part. I'll save the grip safety for last because I want to point something out there. As we look at the sear, you know, the hammer hook height is 0.22, okay? So 2.0 is about as low as you want to go, really. But if we look at the sear, and I know you're not going to be able to see the angles, especially in this lighting and the camera, but the primary and the relief angles are cut very well, okay? They're even from left to right. It's right about 60-40 as I look at it with my eyeball, 60 to the primary and 40 to the secondary or relief angle. The sides are polished, right, as they should be. As a matter of fact, the whole part has been polished in some manner, so it runs very smoothly in the gun. So you don't get any distraction there. Same thing with the hammer. I mean, the sides of the hammer are smooth. The hammer hooks have been you know, cut to an appropriate length and then also stoned. You can see there's a little bit of shine there. You can see, all right. Again, what they don't do, and I found the same to be on a Wilson, is they don't address the strut. Okay, I normally will smooth out that strut, but that's okay, not a big deal. Solid hammer. As I go through the gun, the only part that I find that is a cast part would be the magazine release. Okay, so not a big deal. There's not a bunch of min in the gun as you would expect with this price point. There shouldn't be. Firing pin stop, again, they dress the bottom radius edge here. They don't radius it, it comes that way, but they dress it so that it runs smoothly. And then it's obviously fit to the slide. It's a nice tight fit to the slide, so everything's doing what it's supposed to do. The gun really is like a bank vault. If we look at the extractor, we have positive extractor tension. There's no issues there, and you can tell. Hopefully you can pick it up in the light, but the bottom edge of the extractor has been radiused and polished, okay, and some work done to the inside lip of the extractor so that you get really positive extraction of the spent cartridge, okay. So these are all things you want to see in a gun, and the trigger's obviously been worked on. There's not a lot of sheen where they would have to take a little material off top and bottom, but it's there and you can tell that it's done with the naked eye. On the camera you're probably not going to get a lot of that, okay. One detail step, and I'm not 100% sure if they do this in-house or if the trigger comes to them this way, but if you look at the 3-hole trigger, each of the holes is actually beveled out, so you don't have any sharp edges there either. Okay, same thing with the hole in the face of the trigger. So everything is beveled out. There's no sharp edges, but you obviously have positive traction on the face of the trigger. Okay, and then the strut itself has been polished out prior to assembly. Okay, this is a biggie here. So this is the safety that I use. This is the SVI OptiFit, and you know, your traditional safety is going to only have the singular fitting tab, where the OptiFit has a secondary fitting tab, so you can't move it up when the hammer is down. Must have this part. Okay, this is the part that I've been replacing the standard safeties with because of that pet peeve that you should remember from the first series of videos. Now, with respect to the beaver tail grip safety, it's very well fit to the gun. There's no issues there, but when I took it apart, and this is the first time I've had this gun all the way down, I noticed some strange geometry going on there. Okay, looks like a notch has been knocked out of that. Well, as I look at it, it looks as though it's purposeful, but as I inspect further, what I notice, and you're not going to see this at all with your eyeball on this camera, but I can see there's a weld line right here. So at some juncture in the history of this pistol, there was a parts failure here. Okay, it snapped off. The arm of the safety snapped off, or was busted off, or somebody had it out of the gun and was cranking on it for some reason and snapped it. I don't know what, but my assumption is that they had sent it back, and that was the suitable warranty remedy, was to weld a new piece on and file that to fit. Is that the best way to do it? As long as it holds and it works, and it does, there's no issue there. I would think if it were me sending it back, I would have required a new safety, but obviously they deemed that that was the appropriate fix. It's not wrong or right, it's just a way. So there has been a repair to that part as I dissect this gun and look into it, but it does its job. It's not a weak weld. I can't break this part off or anything. I've tried, messing with it to see if it was weak, but it's not. So really pretty much done with the internal review of this firearm. One more thing I'll point out about the barrel I didn't point out, and I do apologize for that, is they do throat and polish the barrel as well. So really everything that you would be looking at in respect to a trigger job, if you were to pay a gunsmith to do one, or a reliability job, if you were to pay a gunsmith to do that, or barrel fit, these are all things that are taken care of when you buy one of these pistols. And obviously it should, right? They're being built in the custom shop by gunsmiths, and the custom shop is, overseen by a gentleman who is a American Pistol Smith Guild member. So there's quality going on there, and everybody makes mistakes sometimes, and sometimes those mistakes are small, like the barrel fit on this gun, and it's really small. I don't know that it's even really a mistake, rather than just simply not absolutely perfect. But if they're building them by hand, there's going to be slight deviations from one to the next. This is a much better example than the other professional that I had that was newer built. Okay, so all in all, I'm impressed with the build quality of the pistol. The only gripes I can come up with is the very slight deviation on left and right lower lug contact, and the repair that apparently was deemed correct, and it is correct. It's just not as pretty as just replacing the part with something new, right? And then again, the staking, it's just a shortcut. But all in all, solid gun. Everything that needs to be done is done. There's really no extras. Okay, done. There are some shortcuts taken, and that just keeps costs down by keeping man hours down. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, gripes, bitches, complaints, file those elsewhere. No, I'm just kidding. Feel free to fire away. Let's engage in conversation, and plug over to the Facebook and the YouTube channels for Strategic Defensive Solutions, and like it, share it, comment on it, and I will be getting the Guncrafter internal review done in the next day or two, so look forward to that one as well. Dave, out.